Hello, Prague. I'm here in Los Angeles actually today. Cursor is based in San Francisco. I'm headed up there tonight. But really excited to be with all of you here and talk to you about Cursor. I have been a software engineer for over 25 years. I started as an engineer in New York City, and then I moved to San Francisco. Eventually did product manager work. I have founded a couple companies. Last kind of chapter of my life was running a SaaS company. Um, and started using AI assisted coding tools really when ChatGPT came out, kind of the end of 2002. In 2003 started to, or excuse me, 23 started to discover that these models were getting good at generating code and at server administration, and really just I'm sure like a lot of you just started kind of copying and pasting back and forth between ChatGPT and then back and forth between Claude. And I discovered Cursor about a year ago, and it completely changed my life. The fact that it was able to maintain a context window, the fact that it was able to apply changes to the code, it just, I had a couple days where I felt a little guilty, like I was cheating a little bit, and then I got over that really quickly, and it just, I have never been so energized and inspired about software development because of this tool. So I joined Cursor the first week of February. I was employee, I think 26. We're at about 80 now. So I'm really kind of a veteran, if you will, considering how quickly the company is moving. But I just, it's just been quite the ride. It's a fantastic company to work for. Everybody there is really brilliant. I'm not quite sure how I got a job there. They haven't quite figured me out. But it's really a fantastic place to work. We're all really excited about the work that we're doing. And I think, like you guys, really excited about AI and what it means for our future, and especially what it means for software. So that's a little bit about me. I just tell you, let me just spend a minute just to tell you a little bit about the company, and then I want to make sure we have time for questions. Typically, when we do this, we don't have enough time. So maybe we should move into questions after that. And then if we run out of questions, I can tell you a little bit more about the software and some features that are coming. But just a little bit about Cursor. The parent company of Cursor is called AnySphere, and we're really an applied research lab. So there's definitely a large part of the company that is building Cursor and getting it out to users. But there's also a part of the company where we're doing a lot of research on how to best use these models for writing code and also creating our own models. Those of you that use the tab feature in Cursor, that is Cursor's own proprietary model called Fusion. And even when you're using the other frontier large language models that we support, there are many other Cursor creative models operating in the background to help complete that functionality, like applying the code to the files. So it has some really brilliant researchers that are working here at Cursor to develop a lot of new features and new functionality and new methods. And as I'm sure you guys know, like this space moves so fast. It seems like another major model is coming out every month or so, just completely breaking the ceiling of the last ones. And so it's a really exciting space. We also try to ship really quickly. We're doing a major release once a month. It's pretty amazing the pace, but I experienced that both as a user and also working at that company. So it makes it really exciting. So that's kind of a quick update, rundown on me and the company. And, again, we only have about 20 minutes here, so would love to move to questions and answers. I can certainly talk about a couple things that we have coming up, but you guys can always read about that and would love to talk to you a bit.
It's wonderful. We have tons of questions in Slido. So you have the link in the chat, but I'll read the questions out so you can just react. Most of the all of the questions are better than my questions that I seeded. So I'm just gonna go to Slido immediately. And the first question is a bit philosophical, but it's a really nice question. How do new tech tools that vibe with our emotions and social cues shift how we understand culture and connection?
That is quite a first question. I got to tell you, they weren't asking questions like this in Barcelona last week. That's for sure. Um, I think that the engineer's experience using these tools, the kind of the qualitative experience is really relevant. In fact, we work with a lot of companies. These are big companies now that are wanting to use Cursor. And they keep trying to figure out like how can we measure like what quantitative ways can we measure how effective the code or the tool is. And you can look at how many lines generated or how many lines committed, this and that, but really the true metric, I think, is the qualitative experience. Can you ask the engineer, like, this thing that you did last week, how much faster was it, and what was the experience like compared to had you not used Cursor? And I think that for me, as I mentioned before, like this tool has totally changed my life. I mean, the fact that I can work so fast, the fact that I can offload work to Cursor that I don't necessarily want to do, kind of grunt work, things I've done a million times before that aren't really inspiring and interesting to me. Um, it has just improved my quality of life and my happiness as an engineer. It really has changed my life. And so I think that when you think about emotions and just quality of life and what we can do as users, it's pretty amazing what's going on. I also read Twitter a lot. I just think it's a great resource for AI information. There's a lot of people on there sharing their experience and what they're building. And this whole movement of vibe coding, whether you are not a software engineer and you have just heard that you can use these tools to build your own software, or you're an experienced engineer and you're leveraging these tools to be able to move so fast and to spin up little side projects or try different businesses at a speed that you couldn't before. It just feels like a really exciting time. And culturally, it really is shifting things. So I love that about this. And as somebody who's been in this industry, I mean, I have, every like feel like every 7 or 8 years I get like burned out and I'm like, maybe I'm just done with software entirely. And then I get sucked back in. And again, it was AI this time that sucked me back in. I just feel like we're at this whole place where like it's not so hard to be a software engineer. It really is a lot more fun. And it's just really changing everything. So I'm super excited about it.
So thank you so much. Moving on, we have a spicy question, maybe. Windsurf versus Cursor. Why do you prefer Cursor? Asking as a non-technical Windsurf user.
I haven't heard of Windsor. Can you tell me more about? No, I'm joking.
All right, on to the next one.
Yeah. No. So I, a couple things. First of all, I think competition is great. Windsurf, we have a much larger market share than Windsurf does. We were really kind of the first to market in terms of capturing that share, which has been great. We're a different kind of style company. Our messaging and our marketing is different. They're very similar products though. And I think that the competition is really good for both of us. I think both of us, we build better products this way. We're more competitive with our pricing. I think the competition is good. What I like about Cursor and why I am at Cursor is number one, the team is incredible here. So many brilliant minds working on Cursor, and the things that we are doing and the people that we're attracting are really, really impressive. We also are going at a pace that I think takes more care. Windsurf is trying to go as fast as they possibly can. And I think we're much focused on quality and doing the right things on our side. This acquisition of Windsurf by OpenAI is going to have pretty major implications. I mean, I think you already saw it last week where we have a very model neutrality sort of approach where we want to provide access to every major large language model that's out there. We're not going to give preference to one or the other. We're very proactive about adding new models when they became available. Sonnet 4, for example, and Opus 4, We added it, I think, within minutes of Anthropic releasing it. We want you to have the choice. With the acquisition of Windsurf by OpenAI, you are going to see, I think, Windsurf only be able to offer open AI models. And that happened last week. Anthropic is not giving them access to Sonnet and Opus 4. And so I think, that's a consideration. OpenAI also approached us for an acquisition and we were not interested. And this is one of the reasons. So I have my own reasons for liking Cursor. I really like the team. I love that I have a selection, a lot of different models. There are a lot of aspects of the product that I prefer. But again, I think the competition is good. I think it will both the existence of both of us will make us each make better products. But I'm really excited about the team here at Cursor and the things that we're doing and what we have in the works.
Awesome, thank you. We're also super excited. That's why we're the Cursor Community Prague and not the Windsurf Community Prague. But awesome. So on the wave of super simple questions for you, Nick, we have another one of those. Is knowledge of design patterns, clean code, and solid principles beneficial?
Sure. I think that's always beneficial. From a guy who's been doing this, for a while, it gives me a lot of advantages when I'm supervising what the code is doing and, looking for technical debt and that sort of thing. That said, you don't need to know all that. You can definitely lean on the model for that. You absolutely do not need to know it to be successful. And I'll tell you something that I do that really addresses a lot of these things. When I am working on a longer form project, and I think those of you that have used Cursor to build something more than is something really simple, that something that goes on for more than a few days. I think you find that when you start to build much larger code bases, the way that you use Cursor changes. You need to really take a different approach to how you use the tools and how you code. And one thing that I do when I'm working on a longer form project, something that might be like a 2 or 3 month project that can be quite elaborate, is that I will have the model do an audit of the code base on a somewhat frequent basis. And as an engineer, you'll kind of know like when is the right time to do this. But if it's a 3 month project, you might be doing it every couple weeks, maybe every 3 weeks. You'll know. But what I'll do is I will ask the model to audit my code for things like consistent design patterns, dry practices, good principles. And I'll often use a reasoning model for this because they'll think more deeply. But basically have it evaluate my entire code base and identify any areas where I can make it more efficient, where I'm using inconsistent implementation, any sort of improvements I can make. And it will return back for me usually like 10 or 20 suggestions on things that I can improve about the code base. Those of you familiar with the term technical debt is a term around software development where there's always a perfect way to build something, but sometimes you'll cut some corners to move a little faster. So, you may not always do it exactly as clean and perfect as possible, nor should you. But the more of those corners you cut, the more technical debt you incur. And eventually that debt becomes so big that you have to start paying it off or you will run into problems. And that is true whether you're using a large language model or hand coding. As a project goes on, you have to kind of come back and clean things up and improve them. And so by doing these check-ins every couple of weeks with a model and getting a list of improvements, you can address kind of the technical debt that the models can generate and clean them up. Often in that list of 10 or 20 things, some of those are really easy. I mean, you can even copy what it suggests it to do, and you can paste that in, and the model will clean it up. Other things may take a little more time, and you'll want to do them, but you may need to set aside some more time to do it, or you may think, okay, I'm going to do this, but maybe a little later in the project. Other things may be so big you want to ignore them. But I think doing these recurring audits, especially on larger code bases, whether you're a very experienced engineer or you don't necessarily have great knowledge of design patterns and clean code and principles, is a good way to keep control of that technical debt, keep that code base clean. And that will also allow the model to be more efficient and be able to build better also as you continue on.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Do you use Cursor to develop Cursor?
We do. How great is that?
Want to expand on that a bit, or?
I mean, we do. Yeah, everybody, I mean, just like this has changed all of your lives. You think we're hand coding cursor? No way. We're using cursor. And it's great working at cursor. There are many benefits. I get free cursor, so I can use any model I want as much as I want, which is terrific. We also have something called Cursor Nightly, where every single night, this is a separate installation of Cursor that I have on my computer. Every night I get an update there with all of the stable code for the next release, well, stable beta code for the next release that's been submitted by the engineers. So I can kind of keep tracking the next release and the new features that are coming out. It's typically that nightly release that everybody is using because it's also a way for us to dog food our own software, for us to be testing it and catching errors. And then there's also the main branch of Cursor that I can spin up that has like everything in the kitchen sink, every single experimental thing and everything we're working on that can be really fun to play with too. But we're all running that nightly. And that's what if you walk into our engineering offices on every single screen, you will see us running Cursor. It's also, I love going over to that office and having dinner with those guys because, and women, men and women, it's so much fun to talk to them about the product, about what they're working on, and about what their favorite models are. There is a wide variety of daily drivers as far as models go. Some people love Claude 3.5, 3.7, now 4.0. Other people love GPT 4.1. And it's so interesting to hear everybody's take on everything, but it really allows us to get a lot of experience with the product and the models.
Awesome. Thank you so much. There is a popularity contest between two questions. So we're just going to pick one that Slido says is the more popular right now. Why is intelligence of models in Cursor so inconsistent? It is not just context overflow. I'm starting to be esoteric and believe in star constellation.
Okay. I will say this, that I think a few things about getting good, consistent results from a model. Number one, your context window is super important. So I would start a new session, a new chat tab with every single focus of work you're working on. So I'm working on a collection of related tasks that are focused on one part of the software. I'm going to start a new session and work through there. As soon as I move into something else that is unrelated to those tasks, I'm starting a new session. If you start to run a really long session and jump around to a lot of different unrelated things, it will start to cloud the context window, and I think it will degrade your results. That's number one. Number two, when you start a new session, highly recommend in that first prompt really setting out a good foundation for the session, some really good context. Talk about what files you're working on, talk about the functionality you're working on. I like to ask the model questions about the functionality we're going to be working on, like what exists in the code base already. Even if I know the answers to the questions, it gets that into the context window and provides a good foundation. And I find that really helps. Also, sometimes you can get a false sense of security. If you have a great session that's running where you feel like the model's reading your mind and everything's going great, and then you start a new session and you forget that every new session, every new tab is a whole new context window, and you just put in this little prompt because you're just like, oh, this model knows everything about me. No, it's a completely clean slate. And sometimes we can get lazy and forget this is a new session. I got to, again, build a really solid foundation. Last thing I'll say is sometimes like the context window is just screwed up. And sometimes it's best just to start a new session and start over. If you're just like, I don't know what is going on with this model, it's so stupid, it's not understanding anything. Sometimes a new session with a clean, a good initial prompt or two, setting up good context will get things back on track.
Absolutely. Thank you. Do you have any recommendations how to make Cursor adhere more to dot cursor rules? Which LLMs are the most likely to respect the rules versus who are the rogue ones?
Yeah. So, my approach to rules is I start very, very simply. You can go online. There are different third-party sites that have like directories of rules that users can upload. You can search your language or your framework and see all these examples of rule sets. Some of them are like 200 or 300 lines long. I think those are great to like look at as you're starting to think about rules, but I start super simple with my rules, so basic. Like, this is a back end code base and not a front end, so I don't want it looking for front end code, or I'm using Python 3.11 because I want to make sure that the functions and the syntax it uses are compatible with 3.11. But I don't put any of these directives in there about like, think deeply about my prompt and like all that kind of stuff. I just start really simple. And then so like, just a few rules I start with. Then anytime I see the model making the same mistake more than 2 or 3 times, getting confused about the same thing more than 2 or 3 times, if I'm implementing a design pattern in multiple places in the code base and it's implementing it inconsistently, those are all signals to me that I need to add another directive in my rules. And if you really go like that, just kind of brick by brick reacting to the bad behavior of the model when you need to realign it, I think you get much simpler rule sets. If you have a very long rule set, the model is not going to follow those directives as well. Also, for me at least, sometimes like I won't look at the rules for a few days and then I'll come back and I'll be like, I forgot these rules were even in here. They're working against me. This conflicts with that. So I like to just stay very, very basic and use those cues I described on when to add additional rules.
What is the language that has the best results? Does it make sense to change my language from .NET to Python, Go, or anything else?
Yeah. So I think a lot of this has to do with the LSP support for VS Code and Cursor. So, when you go into extensions, which is in that same pane in Cursor as your file explorer, you can switch over to extensions and you can install thousands of different extensions that are available for VS Code and Cursor. You can install language support. If I'm writing Python, I have the Python LSP installed and a lot of other things. And that kind of gives you all this helper functionality for the language. So some languages have better extension support than others. We are looking at the languages that don't have very good support and looking at ways that we can improve those extensions. And I think you'll see that more and more in the coming year. We've already released some of our own extensions. So, when you're thinking about what language to use, some of these languages are better, like Python, really good language support. I think Python Cursor does really well writing that code. It's not that the Cursor is not good at writing other languages, and there are many other languages that it does really well with too. I'm just using Python as example. The models are very well trained on all of these languages, but I think sometimes where the gap is with the extensions and some of those helper functions. Java is a good example. Models are very well trained on Java, but Java does not have as good language support in the VS Code Cursor extension. And so for that reason, it has some shortcomings, and that's a great example of an extension that we're looking at improving really significantly.
That's also because that's actually the next question that we have here. There's probably a lot of Java and Kotlin engineers in the room here in Prague. Do you have a plan to release a JetBrains plugin like Windsurf did?
Not at this time. We are really focused on making the Cursor ID as good as it can be. And we feel that splitting off and trying to build a plugin which is not going to have nearly as good functionality as the Cursor ID does is a distraction, and we will end up building something that just is subpar. So at this time, we would much rather focus on really improving the Java support in Cursor as opposed to starting to build out a whole extension selection that just is not going to be as good as the main product that we're building.
Thank you. You're super popular, Nick. We have probably like 500 more questions for you in the Slido, but we want to be mindful of your time. So maybe if you want to say,
just like, let's do this again. I would love to do it again with you guys.
We absolutely will.
We can even schedule more time next time. So let's make it a recurring thing.
We absolutely will. Do you want to say a couple of words before you jump? Maybe about the next releases.
Yeah, I'll give you guys two things. And I'm serious about wanting to do this again. Just love your enthusiasm. I wish I could be there in person. Maybe we can make that happen one of these days. Two quick things that are coming with Cursor that I'm super excited about. One is Background Agent. Background Agent is going to allow you to ship tasks up to Cursor in the cloud. Similar to how you can run agent in Cursor and have it complete a task there, you now will be able to ship many, many tasks up to Background Agent, shut down your computer, go out to dinner, go to bed, come back, and the task will be completed. And Cursor will go many, many more cycles using much more advanced models to really give you a final product that has been audited several times. The code has been improved and improved and improved. We really see this as the future here for Cursor, and that is something that is in a limited public beta release, and you will see rolling out here this summer. One other thing, BugBot. BugBot is another feature that we're now testing in beta with some of our enterprise clients. It's something we've been using internally for over 6 months now. With BugBot, you can set up Cursor where every single PR that you commit to GitHub, Cursor will audit that code and compare the PR to the branch it's merging into, and it will post as comments to the PR any defects that it finds, and then you can open any of those in Cursor and fix them. And you can also think about how those could work together. Background Agent commits potentially PRs, and then BugBot searches any additional issues there merging into the code base. You can see how you can get even more and more automated, and we're sort of as humans now kind of orchestrating the robots to build out our code base. So super excited about that. All right, I'm sorry I have to jump to another meeting here. Really love the time, the interest. I feel terrible that we couldn't get to all these questions, but please, let's do this again. I would love to talk to you guys. Let's set an hour aside. I'm also Nick WM on Twitter. You're welcome to message me there, interact with me there, and nick@cursor.com. You can also email me there.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. Was Nick Miller, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.